this, and also for the video that's going to be on.
Great. So
Thank
we're
you.
we're live?
We are live.
Great. So it's about 7:33 on, excuse me, 6:33 on August the 10th, 2022. This is the Town of Barnstable Shellfish Committee, and I'll call it to order. Let's do a roll call, just as to. There we go.
Robert Lancaster.
Bill Charapon.
Patricia Farina.
Amy Croto?
And Stuart Rapp. And? There we go. First order of business is to approve the minutes, and we have the minutes from, no, first order of business is to read the recording. Notice of recording. Please note that tonight's meeting is recorded and broadcast on Channel 18, and in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. None? Okay. So first order of business is to approve the minutes of the June 8th, 2022 meeting and the July 13th, 2022 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve them together.
I move that we approve the meetings of those two dates.
Right, it's been moved, seconded as both of them. Any discussion about them? So they're as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
They're, and I as well, they're approved as of, as presented, and thank you very much for doing those, Alicia. I'll reserve comments for the time being. Natural Resources Report, September closures.
Yes, so we have our conditional area closures in Barnstable Harbor. This is what it looks like when you have marsh closures. And actually, who knows, after the next 3 years, maybe some of this will go away as a result of the additional water quality sampling we're doing with DMF this year. I do have, at this point, Tyler Hagenstein has offered to do the November and December run with Simone, our area biologist.
Great.
Wayne Hayes has offered to do the September run. My department will accommodate one of the October runs, so I'm just looking for someone else to take on the other October one. I'm quite sure Jake or Connor will pick it up, so I'm not too worried about that. This is the close-up of what that closure looks like at Calves Pasture. We put a sign in the marsh here, and then a couple of pink buoys that go out to the other sign there to make a sort of line of sorts for people, and then our stereotypical recreational area closure that takes effect April 1st annually. And this is what it looks like, the change in the Salton Point closure. So this is the prohibited area that's just always closed, and then we have this line that extends out from Blish. Does anyone have any questions about the September 15 closures? They're pretty long-standing since, like, I was, in
Amy?
middle school.
Excuse me, Amy, when you put these up on the screen, are they available to me via the web or an email or somehow?
Effective September 15th, they're posted on the Shellfish website. Yeah.
And any material that you use in our meetings is available to us? That
Yeah.
you, up here on the screen? Where would I be pulling that from?
I mean, like if you wanted.
From the Town of Barnstable website.
Yeah,
Natural Resources website.
Maps, because these closures don't take place until September 15th, aren't formally posted online until the 15th when they're effective. But if you want copies of them ahead of time, you can just email me and ask for them, and I'd be more than happy to send them to you.
Okay, I'm thinking of all of our meetings, any material that's presented that you normally use to give us copies of them, paper copies, but we don't need paper copies when we can, have it online somehow.
Right. I mean,
So-
I do send you electronically copies of any RDAs and notices of intent that we
Okay.
present here. I also send you electronically any aquaculture renewal transfers or applications. It's the maps, I think, is probably the only thing that I don't routinely send you following a meeting. But again, if that's something that you
That's
want,
something, yeah, okay.
That's fine.
That's all I wanted to understand. Okay, thank you.
and then, yeah, that's really all I've got in
Okay.
terms of that for now.
Perfect. I'll move on to new business unless somebody's got a question for Amy. The new business is definition for a shellfish regulation book, sunset, sunrise, low tide.
Yes, so I have a handful of guys who every so often like to argue over when low tide is according to us and when low tide is according to them. And the same goes for sunrise and sunset. This is not unique to shellfishing. I run into this issue with hunters every year also. So what we'd like to do is add definitions for low tide, sunrise, and sunset to make it clear to anyone who's going shellfishing that this is what we use, and so that's what you need to use. I need something to be uniform. The way that the tide charts were initially produced was supposed to be uniform, but on them you'll notice, as Kenny Aitnimi has pointed out to me numerous times over the years, that they speak to adding a half hour for Barnstable Harbor, and they speak to adding an hour for Hyannis with no mention of anywhere else on the south side, which leaves opportunity for individual interpretation. It seems most specifically in Katuitt Bay. So what we're proposing is to add a definition for low tide, just stating that for enforcement purposes, low tide is based on the Boston Tide Calendar available at the Marine Environmental Affairs Department for all water bodies on the north side of town, Cape Cod Bay, and Barnstable Harbor. Low tide is 0.5 hours after the time listed in the Boston Tide Calendar. For all water bodies on the south side of town, including Nantucket Sound, low tide is 1 hour after the time listed in the Boston Tide Calendar. And again, sunrise and sunset, for enforcement purposes, time of sunrise and of sunset would be based on the Boston Tide Calendar. And that just allows us to have something that's legitimately enforceable rather than continuous arguments over like 10 minutes here or 15 minutes there.
Is this something that we have to vote on? And is this the first reading? Bring it back to the next meeting to vote on it?
Yeah, so we've been through kind of the first reading of like the changes to the no commercial zone in Barnstable Harbor,
Right.
which would result in some definition changes of the area itself, but we had discussed what those definitions would be. And this would be a first reading for this. My intent is to have like a vote of proposed regulation changes and definition additions for the September meeting. So that way it can go to a hearing in either October or November, which would give us enough time to get it to print prior to next year's regulation.
So
books
they'll
going
all
on.
be in one? Mm-hmm. Perfect. Anybody have any discussion or questions about these definitions? Makes sense. Question?
No, just point of clarification. So when you renew your license, you'll get a copy, or that'll be part of, like, if you go online and renew your license, so when you continue on, will there be terms or definitions as part of the packet?
So there's a definition section in the very beginning of the shellfish regulation book,
Okay.
which is also available online in the E-code. So it would be added to the definitions
Okay, good.
section.
I got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that way, anywhere that low tide is referenced in our regulations, it ties back to this definition of low tide.
Great, thanks.
Perfect. And that'll be on next month's agenda? Mm-hmm. All of the changes will be?
Yep.
Perfect. Number 6, upcoming coastal project. What do we have? This is 707 South Main Street in Centerville? Mm-hmm. Nobody's here for the applicant?
It went to the Conservation Commission on the 2nd.
Oh, okay.
And was just an RDA. So
Okay.
I can tell you that issues discussed, Waterways Committee had no objections. Division of Marine Fisheries letter was read into the record. The existing float is 208 square feet. It's being proposed to reduce to 200 square feet. A question was raised why they're making the change and if it's a substantial change. It was determined that it is not a substantial change. There was a discussion on the current boats docked at the float. The requirements today are different than when it was permitted, but the pursuit boat that they have is grandfathered in. DMF letter suggested the use of float stops. Float stops will be a challenge with just 2 piles. This is a seasonal float. There's more than 1.5 feet of water at low tide. So it's in a prohibited area. A shellfish survey was not required, given the nature of the request, which was just to remove the existing float and relocate it.
Gotcha. where is this? I know it's on the Civil River, beyond
Let's see if I
the
can
ramp,
find that out
or
for
up
you.
from the ramp?
See if I can pull up a map. Didn't have it.
Prohibited area?
Yes,
So we can't go in there and get shellfish. That's what that means.
why does
they
the
have
number
any
thing
gap?
not matter?
I'm sorry?
Do they
Out of
have any to
prohibited
get?
areas, no.
What's that?
Do they have any to get?
Oh, yeah,
So this is where you're at. It's the
that's the bridge.
Long Beach
yeah.
here, that's the bridge. This is where we are allowed to do our contaminated relays up to.
Yeah,
Right.
Then this is prohibited, prohibited. So,
Oh, so that's because of all the pollution in the water.
yes, it's
Yeah.
because of the amount of fecal coliform that is always present in the water.
Gotcha.
Can I ask a quick question that's not really, well, it is related, but isn't? Down toward Dowses Beach, where the water flows out into the bay, that's clean for shellfishing? But on the back two beaches that are there, on the left-hand side or on the north side or west side of Dowses Beach, those two areas are closed?
Finney's Bay, which is like the little small sort of estuary that all the kids go blue crabbing at, is prohibited and is never open. East Bay proper, which is like what I consider to be the kiddie pool of Douses, just because I went swimming there a lot as a child, is conditionally approved. Eligible to open now, earliest December 1st, because it missed too many November 1st openings.
Yeah.
And is potentially open
Winter
until,
months.
yeah, May
Okay.
1st.
Yeah. Good, thanks.
Yep.
So that's it for our agenda.
I know. Unless there are matters
Anything?
not reasonably anticipated by the chair, right?
Yes.
I would move that we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. You want to have a discussion about it? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. I think it was the quickest meeting.
I